direct your attention to the TV screen where we will be showing you a short video.
I'm coming. Are you feeling excited, Jaden?
Yeah, a little like that.
Son, I'm so proud of you. I'm gonna miss you so much.
It's okay. It's okay. Don't worry, Mom.
Now, Dad, you have to take care of yourself, alright? You understand?
Yes.
Alright.
Hi, Jaden. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I'll be looking forward for you to come back and play for Singapore.
It's an honor, Fandi.
Singapore, let's take a shot.
Give us a chance to dream.
Okay, and now can I please invite FAS President Mr. Lim Kia Tong to give his opening address. Mr. Lim?
Thank you, Mus. Bernard Tan, Deputy President, Football Association Singapore. Lim Tegin, CEO, Sports SG, friends from the media, and the football fraternity watching us live on social media. A very good afternoon to all of you. There has been much discussion about having a long-term national football project that will galvanize the whole of society since it was first put forward in August 2019. The initial reaction towards this project inevitably draws comparison with Go 2010, which was first mooted in 1998. While we acknowledge that Go 2010 did not reach its originally intended goal, it has brought about several positive outcomes, including the Lions' extended period of dominance in the region, winning 4 ASEAN Championship titles starting in 1998, and then in 2004, 2007, and finally 2012. Now, looking back at Go 2010, it was primarily driven at implementing high-performance fixes and having the sole objective of qualifying for the 2010 World Cup finals. But I'm certain that we should look to do more than that. And the objective must be to rebuild the sport from the ground up. The focus will be on the fundamentals of football, starting from the grassroots stage right up to the elite level. This is why we have introduced Unleash the Raw. It is our next step to bring Singapore football forward. Unleash the Raw has incorporated lessons learned from Goal 2010. Unlike past projects which have been solely measured against results on the international stage, Unleash the Raw will be grounded in the longer-term sustainability of our football ecosystem. The focus will be on improving overall standards in key aspects of the ecosystem, and through that, aim to achieve outcome and success well beyond 2034. Unleash the Raw is a national project supported by government agencies, the football fraternity, corporate sponsors, and most importantly, our fans and members of the public. In the development of the blueprint, which will be shared shortly, we work closely with our key stakeholders and took into consideration all feedbacks gathered from various groups of the fraternity during our engagement with them, including our critics. We will continue to lean on feedbacks from all stakeholders who share the dream of seeing Singaporean footballers succeed at the highest level, to fine-tune our blueprint as we move towards key milestones in the project. We will be taking a holistic approach to rebuild the sport from its fundamentals of grassroots football, youth development, and training facilities, amongst others. There will also be reviews of past and existing programs and infrastructures to identify areas of improvement. Football has always ignited passion among Singaporeans of all ages and from all walks of life. We are hopeful that this project will galvanize our country as we work towards bringing Singapore football to greater heights and striving for football excellence. The road ahead is long, and there will be challenges along the way. But I believe, with all stakeholders sharing the same vision and presenting a united front, Singapore will be able to achieve our footballing dreams. Now, on this note, it gives me great pleasure to invite Mr. Lim Teck Yin, CEO, Sports Singapore, to share his thoughts on Unleash the Raw. Thank you.
Thank you, Katong. A very good afternoon, friends from the media. Can you hear me at the back? Parmas, can you hear me? Hello? Yeah, okay, so the mic's working now. Okay. First and foremost, I would like to congratulate the FAS Council for having the gumption and the ambition to want to launch a national project like this for the long term. It is not easy to stand in front of Singaporeans to speak about an ambitious project like Unleash the Raw. We are our worst critics when it comes to football, or maybe you should say we are our best critics when it comes to local football. But it then follows that we must be the ones to own the solution. No one else can own it but ourselves. And I think since 2019, the FS Council has been working very hard to convince Sport Singapore and government that this indeed is not only just a worthwhile project, but a necessary one that will provide focus for a long-term journey. From Sport Singapore's Vision 2030 perspective, this type of aspiration, daring, and determination is what we need for team sport. The solutions to rally thousands upon thousands of individuals to come together, to work hard and consistently and pull in the same direction is no easy feat. But a project like this focuses attention, and I believe that if we communicate, engage, and believe together as one, great things can happen. Our football participation stats in Singapore, statistics in Singapore, make football an ideal project. On average, for players 13 years old and above, that means not even counting the primary school kids, about 130,000 people play football every week. Of course, these statistics are in pre-COVID times. That is not a small number. Football is the most watched sport in Singapore. And football is one of a few sports that Singaporeans play throughout their lifetime, from the time they're young to the time when they are seniors, believing that they're still young. When I contemplated what I wanted to say today, I went into my cupboard and I found this t-shirt. And wait, in deference to the FS's current sponsor, let me just hold it this way. I don't know how many of you remember this t-shirt. The tagline there is "Now's the time," 1994. It was this campaign, these stories of the dream team of that era that actually spurred the inspiration for our new national stadium. Stories of the Malaysia Cup days, stories of how our teams filled the national stadium with the Kallang Roar, photographs of queues extending way beyond the national stadium overnight. One of my predecessors, Mr. Lau Ting Chuan, explaining to me that then, as the ED of the Singapore Sports Council, he had to stay overnight at the national stadium to ensure the safety and security of fans who were lining up, and to decide when to release ticket sales. Those stories were the inspiration behind the new national stadium and why we still have a national stadium that can sit 55,000. Unleash the Roar is about bringing that back. It is a journey for Singaporeans like no other journey. And the impact that it would have on lives, many lives, children, parents, coaches, mentors, corporates who get involved, these are all part and parcel of what we're hoping to achieve when we talk about Unleash the Roar. It's well and good that our children watch world-class football on television, that they aspire and are inspired by superstars that they watch on TV. But even more important is if they're able to touch them, feel them, speak to them, learn from them. That generation of footballers inspired many others. 4 of them are still with me in the Sports Singapore. They are very much a part of the Active SG Football Academy, and I see the impact of what they've done. The children may never have watched them play, but their parents would undoubtedly have told them who their coach is. But more importantly, I think they absorb and imbue the values, the ambition, the character that is brought to the table. That, again, is what Unleash the Raw is about. This is a journey for Singapore and Singaporeans. And that's why Sports Singapore is getting behind, together with the FS Council, to make this happen. In the years ahead, we will be running a whole series of engagements with all stakeholders, with the children themselves, with their parents, with the coaches, with companies, with people who want to have a part to play. This is not an easy journey, but Singapore's journey as a country has never been easy. Unleash the Raw mirrors Singapore's aspirations as a nation, and football as a project will be a strong platform for us to realize that together. So I want to commend the FS Council once again. Obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic has delayed whatever efforts that we would have loved to have put in place from last year. But this year is not too late, and together with all Singaporeans, we can look forward to inspiring football and an inspiring football journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lim. Now may I present FAS Deputy President, Mr. Bernard Tan, to take us through the details of the Unleash the Raw campaign.
Thank you, Kia Tong. Thank you, Teck In, especially Teck In. Thank you for the words of praise for the FS Council. I'm very grateful. Maybe I'm going to take you through a journey of the next 30 minutes. A lot of the details are going to be given to you in your handout, but I'll bring you through a little bit of thought process as well as the aspirations that we want to have under this quite monumentous project. Unleash the Raw, a tagline for this entire project, was probably conceptualized around the time 2018, 2019. I think the key ideas were there, and really what was left was really to make this, transform this into a national project. The difference obviously is the realization that if we want to dream big, the resources, the effort needs to be a collective one. The entire nation needs to come together. And this distinguishes the project, I think, from previous attempts at actually moving the needle forward in Singapore football. This will require, obviously, the full involvement of government agencies, football fraternity, corporate Singapore, and all Singaporeans, right? We want everyone to have an enthusiasm, obviously, to support this project. The second big difference, it is for Singaporeans. If all of you recall Go 2010, a large portion of Go 2010 was the recruitment of talented and naturalization of talented football players into our fraternity. This is something that we have learned from the past that is probably not as sustainable. If we want to invest in football, it is best that we involve in Singaporeans as a base. And this means that we want our children to grow up and be the stars of tomorrow. It doesn't rule out the inculcation of foreigners into the national team, but certainly the base has to be Singaporean. And this means basically, fundamentally, we are going to invest in a development pathway that is large. I think this means also a lot of things that need to come into place. For Singaporeans to grow up and play football, we need to make sure that football and academics go together. We can't ask them to choose. We don't want them to choose. We want them to go hand in hand. We must search for pathways for our best and most talented Singaporean footballers to play high-level football, either in Singapore or, more importantly, to play beyond our shores. We also need to find places for more people to play football, given the fact that we live in a land-scarce country. I've always pondered to think of a country that has a good football ecosystem that is as land-scarce as Singapore. So we are again going to attempt something that probably the world has never attempted before. And lastly, we want to include, women in the entire thing. So girls are going to participate in this project as well, boys. Next slide. To achieve our aspirations, we need to grow the entire ecosystem. Now, the difference here is all of us who's watched football understand that the game has developed leaps and bounds. It is a game today that's played at a faster pace. It is far more technical. It is far more demanding on coaches, players alike. And this means, obviously, that we need to put the support structures that perhaps have never been in place in Singapore before. I'll just give one example. It was very customary in the previous times, in let's say the 60s and 70s, to just have one coach. Today, you will have goalkeeping coaches, fitness coaches, defensive coaches, striking coaches in just very specialized forms. You will also see support structures with instrumentation. You will see a reliance on data analytics, sports science, nutrition science. And unless we have that ecosystem in Singapore, then we will never be world-class. So there is an intention to grow the entire ecosystem. With a growth in the base, growth in the depth of the entire ecosystem, you will also see opportunities for coaches, managers, players to develop as the ecosystem in Singapore will grow. And lastly, we are not looking for one single objective. We're looking for a sustainable journey and sustainable pathways with the World Cup 2034 as an aspirational target. This aspirational target is important because if we are going to ask our young Singaporeans to commit to this target, they need to aim high. This is something that we want to put before them. But obviously, the success of this project is not just on the qualification. If we can grow an ecosystem, if we can get fans coming to watch the game, parents very interested, if we can raise the level of our game, these are very, very good indicators to say that we have actually achieved substantial improvements in our pathway towards this project in football. Next slide basically just wants to show you the differences that we've had, and I've covered a significant amount that with Goal 2010. I'll just leave it for a while just so that you can read it. And I'll be happy to touch on any of these points later on as we have the question and answer session. Next slide. I want you to one way we can walk through this entire project is to see how it would look like from a player from the age of 6 all the way that he is an elder statesman. Okay, so let's walk through the whole journey. So little one's big dreams. What we want to do is to bring back an ability to play football, and I want to emphasize the word play. We want to make sure that there are opportunities for both boys and girls to play football, right, in a fun way. The aim that I want for the Let Them Play program is really for kids to tell their parents, I want to play football next week, and keep coming back and develop the skills that way. This is how our interest and love for a sport develops. And so our aim is to get masses of kids from the age of 6 to 12 to participate in the game. A lot of this will have to be done at schools because obviously schools are the easiest ways where kids learn to play football. A lot of us who have grown up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s can testify to that. Schools have facilities, they have halls, they have football fields, but most importantly, you have friends. And that's where you actually learn how to play the game. So a lot of emphasis will be resurrecting football programs in schools in a big way. This is really to get the mass program going. But for the more talented kids, from the age perhaps about 9 or 10 onwards, they will have some form of elite coaching. And this will be in addition to what they do in school. And these can take place in areas, in development centers, which I will touch on later when we talk about the elite program. I'll just leave a slide for a testament of one of our younger talents moving forward. Okay, next slide. Some of the desired outcomes are listed here, but let me touch on just 3. The first is a unified curriculum. The emphasis again is on play, but obviously you need to inject a little bit more technical issues so that kids are developing in the correct pathway. This will be promulgated to all schools as well as whatever development centers or play centers that kids have football as a curriculum. The FAS will aim to accredit all these programs so that parents are clear that they are following a unified curriculum. The second point is that we are targeting 10%. 10% of each cohort actually playing soccer. This is actually quite a humble number. If we're asking what the number is today, this would be probably a trebling to quadrupling the number of kids actually playing football. So this is an ambitious target. The last thing is that if we get the base right, the base of the pyramid right, this will form the pipeline of talented kids to move into the school football academy, which is the beginning of the elite program to develop tomorrow's superstars. So, after he finishes primary school, a kid who has gone through maybe 2 years or 3 years of an elite program, and he shows talent, and I'm looking at maybe the top 1 or 2% of the population of soccer players, then he will move through the elite pathway. The elite pathway will emphasize on playing the modern way of football. We call it the Singapore way, and this is something that the technical department and the FAS will promulgate. It will be high tempo, high technical football, possession-based football that we see as the way of the future in terms of our competing in international tournaments. We will make sure that more will have the ability to undergo elite training with all the support infrastructure that I have mentioned. This includes the recruitment of AFC B coaches and A coaches for these bunch of people. We want to make sure that they increase their duration of play. This is one of the key features of the elite program. Today, our kids probably at the elite level maybe train 2 to 3 times a week. We want to increase this to 4, and even this in some countries is recognized as not enough. But this is the start, that they will do 4 training sessions a week. It's not just enough to train, they need to compete. And in every time they go on the field, they must feel tension, and therefore we need an elite competition so that players walking on the field know that every game will be something that will stretch them. And obviously, at the end of the whole pipeline, for the very best, we want opportunities for them to stretch them further. Scholarships will form the base so that we support them in both studies as well as sports. And some of these scholarships will actually enable them to go overseas in academies and schools that we have identified as useful to develop the talent that we are producing. I'll show you again, this is something that, the next slide. So Danielle Tan, for example, has already said that, told her parents that she wants to play in England. She wants to play in the Women's League. And again, it's talent like that with parental support that we hope to actually support going forward under programs or scholarships. What we want is about 250 boys and girls per cohort playing soccer at the elite level. This can be done in the SFAs, can also be done in other COEs, which again will be accredited and recognized by the FAS. And again, this will provide a sustained pipeline of elite development, right? And it's a conducive training environment. What we will want to be able to see as a desired outcome at the end of it is when the player reaches about 16 to 17, the challenge for all these academies is to make the kid SPL ready. By the time he's 17, we want him to be knocking on the door to be playing in the Singapore Premier League. And this will enable him then therefore to reach a standard that will perhaps reach out to actually allow him to go overseas and play professional football in better leagues in the world. Let's follow the kid then to his 17th year. So now he's gone through the let them play, he's gone through the let them soar. At 17 years old, he's playing in the SPL, right? We're hoping that the very best will be able to do that. We want to make sure now that he has the support for national service. One possibility, obviously, is to enlist early, and then he can play as well as do his national service after certain constraints have been handled. And if he goes in early by the age of 18, he can then continue his pathway and journey. Most of you understand that for young talents, the most important years of football development is from the age about 18 to 21, where he is knocking on the door, playing the adult game and knocking on the door of first teams all around the world. So we need to allow that period as a crucial development pathway for the player to perform. The foreign scholarships will then allow the person to also go to other experience football at a higher level. Again, we're looking at tie-up with clubs, with various institutions to allow children to do that. So that will be, again, an opportunity for the young talent to move beyond Singapore shores and excel at the world stage. Next slide. I just wanted to show this, that basically he is our youngest player ever. So it's not a pipe dream for a kid to play in the SPL at the age of 17. But we need more of this. We need more of these kind of players coming through. Next. Some of the desired outcomes, again, I will touch on a few. The first is that both parents and the athlete will have a sense of confidence that football and academia can go together. Again, I want to dare say I'm on the board of sports school. One of the things that we will try is to work both academia as well as sports together. We've always tried to do that. Now we're going to see whether we can increase the intensity of training and work academics around the training as much as we can, right? Rather than the other way around. It's always been the case for many students that we work the training around the academics. But obviously with flexibility in curriculum, flexibility that we're exercising in polytechnics, all these things offer opportunities in which we can actually do it the other way around as well. So these are things that we will look into. I also want to bring a plug for foreign talent. Again, at this age, if there are talented foreigners that find training in Singapore attractive, we will welcome them. This will allow the ecosystem to improve, especially if the foreign talent are also very precocious young talent. Allow our own players. The elite pathway is an important one. We need to make sure that we have a safe environment from the kids when they're growing up from the 12 years onwards. We need to make sure that their parents are assured that their academics are looked after. We need to give them a clear structure and a trajectory and a pathway, basically, to play football at the highest level. Next. I mentioned here on football scholarships, we talked about it before. So what we will have then basically at the pinnacle of the career, we want to see many Singaporeans playing professional football beyond Singapore shores. I think the SPL is an important league and it will continue to be so, especially to blood young Singaporeans who are talented so that they have a platform to perform and with a platform for which talent scouts and people who are looking at footballers to augment their ranks in the different clubs to actually come and see. It's important, therefore, that we blood them early, and if all turns out well, we will have the majority of the national team actually playing at much higher leagues. We would see this as a success if we have Singaporeans playing in the A-League, the J-League, the K-League, all in Europe, in different clubs representing, the hopes and aspiration of future Singaporeans coming around. This we believe will form a much superior national team. So that's the goal. What can ex-internationals and current professionals play? Obviously, with the ecosystem expanding, there will be increased involvement for everyone. For many of the people who are playing in the clubs, they will form role models and inspirations for our younger children coming through. At some stage in their career, some of them may choose to enter the ecosystem as coaches, as managers, as trainers, and as administrators. Some of them will also be as ambassadors in recruiting allies for the project. Some of the desired outcomes is that we will have mentorship programs. This is important to sustain the interest of the kids, as well as to make sure that they have the inspiration to actually make it to the national team and go beyond with different routes that maybe their predecessors were not afforded to. Next slide. Again, what we need to do is also to make sure that the coaching capabilities across the football ecosystem is aligned. Like I said, again, it's important that we have a style of play that emphasizes a development in fitness, in technical abilities, and the ability to play fast, high-tempo soccer. To identify the players that will actually go through the elite pathway, we are constantly having to have a national scouting and talent identification structure. This includes registering the players, tracking progress, and understanding who should be in the radar scope in which we can develop stars of the future. Next. Again, a whole list of bullet points. I want to just highlight maybe two of this. Number one is, given the fact that soccer has advanced, we do need to make sure that we use technology. So this includes the professionalism of both athletes and coaches in actually using technology to aid in their training and to improve. Today, we can break down targets for players in terms of their statistics of what they should and should not be doing. For example, if they say the fitness demands of a game would be to conduct 60 sprints in a game, and then we can track, whether the player actually fulfills that or whether he slows down and after a certain minute because his fitness is not good enough that he fails to actually execute it. These can be identified areas for improvement in a very detailed, discrete, technical way. Obviously, there are other skills that you can have: shooting, percentage shooting, touching, the way of controlling and keeping the ball, things like that. I think relying on data, relying on technical infrastructure is very important going for the future. There will be job creation. There will also be, we're looking actually at developing support from Skills Future as an element and way of moving this thing forward so that the community of coaches it will be increased, as well as the quality of coaches will be increased through the support of our training programs. Lastly, I want to just talk about corporate Singapore. Again, in order to achieve, I think, aspirational goals for Singapore, the whole of community needs to come together. Not just people, but basically our companies as well. There are many ways in which corporate Singapore can contribute to the project. It's not just plainly money, but even support. There are ideas of supporting with job experiences so that people are also assured that there are post-playing opportunities, post-work opportunities after playing. There are also supports of scholarships that can be given to individuals. There are obviously support of youth and children's leagues that can be very valuable. And again, for many of the children, base impressions form very, very early in life. And this can be a way, again, that corporates can work with youths in order to develop the loyalty towards certain brands or certain corporates. So we will make sure that there are tiered sponsorship structures and many more ways for which corporates can participate in this program. Next slide. Yeah. So I want to just show the 8 pillars. These are also listed in your press pack and the handout. So the first one is let them play. Just a quick summary, it's for kids. At the primary school level, maths is the emphasis. Let them soar is the elite pathway. It starts around 10 years old and ends around 16 to 17 years old. The scholarships interface in that, probably given at different ages, some pre-NS, some post-NS. For the girls, obviously, a lot more flexibility given the fact that the national service obligation is not on them. Pillar number 4 is national service. We are looking at ways of working with the current policy rather than anything else. So again, opportunities for us to see how we can do better. Number 5 is enhanced technical capability, really mapping across the entire ecosystem to help our players reach world standards and develop. Same thing with the science and technology track, right? Offering an approach to training that's a lot more scientific. The 7th one is very important, is infrastructure. Again, I've mentioned that Singapore is tremendously land scarce. Just on football fields, we probably have about 250 football fields, not all full size, in the entire country. For many countries, like say in Iceland, I just looked at the number, they have 154 pitches and they have a population of 300,000, right? So if you just do the math, we are 1/10, per capita. But nevertheless, we have overcome many constraints before, and we will look for innovative ways in which to open up the facilities for Singaporeans to train. And the last thing is obviously the whole of society partnerships. This means that the project team has a very difficult task, but obviously something that's very essential of engaging all stakeholders to ensure that there's a momentum of support and that people remain enthused and committed to the project. And I think this is something that obviously we are very conscious that is something that we need to work on very clearly. This is pulling it together. I just wanted to maybe use a little bit of the time here to just talk a little bit about, why we are actually, committed to doing this. I think for many years now, people in Singapore, a lot of people in the population are really want our football to improve. There are many people who talk about the Kallang Raw, the days where soccer was completely supported. We had 50,000 people in the National Stadium. We want those days back. But the road is not easy. A lot of things have changed. And obviously, at the end of the day, if we want to do something, it's got to take a project of this size to actually bring us back to where we or bring us to where we want to be. Remember, this is not just a race among ourselves. It's a competitive sport, which means that much as we have aspirations, countries around us have aspirations as well. You hear of aspirations of Japan wanting to be a top 10 country in the world. There's aspirations of China wanting to qualify. So this is a running race. It's not a static race. We are actually trying to sprint to move forward. So it's not just a competition among ourselves. Like I said, it is competition among the footballing nations of the world. But we believe we can get there. And it's because of the fact that we believe in Singapore that we have achieved exceptional things. And especially in the 4G Singapore, we've done a lot of things on the economic front, a lot of things on the social front, but on the sporting front, we ought to have a dream. And this is a dream for the 4G Singaporeans. It's a dream for our children. It's a dream for our 12 years old, our 10-year-old, or 8-year-old. It's a dream that hopefully when we become grandparents, right, that our grandchildren can also have that dream moving forward. Right, we're happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We've come now to the Q&A session of the media conference. A couple of house rules before we begin. There will be a wireless mic that will be going around, so if I could just seek your cooperation to raise your hand first and then be called upon. When you're given the mic, kindly please state your name and your media publication clearly, as well as and then followed by your question. So I'll open the floor up for questions right now. Would anyone like to go first?
Hi, Dylan from New Paper. Can I check in terms of the financials, right?
How much would this project cost?
So I just want to see the role engagement is. President answer all the difficult questions. Anything to do with policy, you answer. Anything with football, you answer.
I think it's obvious that it's going to cost us more than we are currently funding for football. And we are working through the details of the budget for the first 2 years, where we will indeed put in place all the core elements of the 8 pillars that we spoke about. This will also involve us engaging corporate Singapore, because I think there is a role from SMEs to multinationals to play a part in this aspiration. Right? When we think about the scholarships that we want to give to budding talent, those scholarships don't have to be funded by government necessarily. I think if we see the goal as worthwhile and the aspirations as worthwhile, we will work together to be able to resource this project. I also want to say that today already we pump in a considerable amount of resources to ensure that we have football fields and infrastructure available. There will be enhancements required to put in perhaps more artificial pitches to enable far greater intensity of use. There may be a requirement to floodlight schools, fields to enable, again, an extended duration of play. But one thing is for certain, I think we are determined to put in place all the critical elements that are required and to be able to maximize the returns on the investments. Right? There's a lot to be said about improving the ROI for dollars that we are already spending.
Next question.
Hi, Navini from Today here. I wanted to find out a bit more about how you guys plan to evaluate the success of this entire project. So we already said that Goal 2034 is an aspirational goal. So are we also going to be looking at other things like you said earlier, participation rates? Can we get some specific numbers on that? How about in terms of world ranking? Are we looking at a certain ranking by a certain year? Yeah, could we get more details on that, please?
I'll just participation rate. Yeah, I'll just talk about outcomes. So you're right. In every of the pillar that we have, we want to measure some outcomes, right? So again, these are the outcomes that we wanted to make sure that we fix as part of the project. I must tell you that there are certain outcomes that we're still discussing. But let's say, for example, participation, we are quite fixed. We want 10% of kids to be playing soccer on a regular basis. Again, you know how we measure regular. When you say playing football, right? It cannot be just you play 1 month, you know, and then done, right? We want you to play regularly. And so our metrics of how we measure what's regular play needs to be updated. In my own mind, if we can go through the school year, which is 40 weeks, and if you can play 30 of those weeks regularly, right? I think that's fine, right? And kids will have fun, that's fine. So that's one example. For the elite pathway, like I said again, we wanted to have about 250 per cohort, so 1,000 kids actually training at the elite level. That's actually quite significant. I'll just give you an example of per cohort intake in the sports school. We take in 14 to 16 kids. So we want it to be 250 across, you know, the entire infrastructure. It's a massive increase. Again, you know, we need to have dedicated parents, dedicated athletes to do that. So that kind of numbers, I think we've quite fixed. I think in the end, we have aspirational numbers that we can't really fix now because obviously we want to make sure that we have all the cooperative structures in place. Like, for example, how many kids do we want to send on scholarships? This needs obviously a receiving body to also form. Those things are not fixed yet. So again, when we do have them, we will set targets for those areas as well. Yeah, so we will be actually getting concrete numbers. A lot of the deck will show you some of the concrete numbers that we already worked out. But again, believe we still have other targets that we want to be able to do as we go develop the project forward. I don't know whether taking you wanted to add anything.
I think from a high performance accountability standpoint, we have set across the entire period all the way to 2034 competition target results that we need to be able to achieve in order to benchmark success. Right? It is inconceivable that we would think of journeying to 2034, for example, without getting to a SEA Games gold medal. Something that we have never achieved in Singapore football till today. And it's something that we aspire to achieve as part of this journey. So I think, again, those details are available in terms of what we have worked with the FAS to develop some competitive milestones.
Can we have our next question?
Concerning your one part of the question was about the ranking of the national team. Now, if I remember correctly, the ranking as it stands now is 158. Right? Now, there has been some improvement over 16 something prior to the appointment of our current national coach, Tatsuma. And his contract has recently been extended, and you could see that, you know, the way in which he's able to bring out the best in the players, bring out the best in the player to play in a very natural and concerted way. That is why we have put in a lot of effort to get his contract extended. But we do know that the performance of our senior team will definitely be an inspiration, a motivation for our lower age group teams as well as the whole Singapore. So we are working extremely hard on that, and we hope that we will continually improve our standing. And as I mentioned earlier, standing alone is not a reflection of the success of the national project. Right, this national project requires the conviction, the beliefs of the population that we can in fact do it. With that belief, I'm sure the national team will work with a lot of commitment to bring up the level of their ranking.
Maybe just a segue, you did mention, since the aspiration is to qualify for the World Cup, if we just take the current FIFA rankings and take 8.5 teams from Asia, it would have to be about 89 to qualify for the World Cup. A top 100 team. Yeah.
David from the Straits Times. Sorry to press, but I just want to ask, at least for these 2 years, what is the projected cost? And the competition targets, right? You mentioned SEA Games gold. Are there other milestones like winning the Suzuki Cup again, for example, and qualifying for the Asian Cup?
I'm going to talk about your targets first.
Okay, so targets, yeah. So David, thank you for asking the question. If we do have an aspiration for our young children to actually qualify for the World Cup, it's almost certainly that we have to be champions in Southeast Asia. We have to be at top rank. We have to dominate that thing, right? But we're not going to say that as the sole goal. Our goal, the aspirational goal, is going to qualify for the World Cup and go 2034. And you and I know that in order to do that, you have to be dominant in Asia. So certainly along the way, there will be Suzuki Cups victories as well. Yeah.
I think most of you are aware that annually our football budget that we extend to the FAS, including some of our own internal Sport Singapore spending, reaches up to easily about 20 million annually. When we think about the budget as we apply it, the biggest cost is going to come from infrastructure. Right? We are already in the process of rebuilding some of our current sport infrastructure, whether you're thinking about Punggol Regional Sports Centre, the project for the redevelopment of Toa Payoh, as well as when we think about improvements to all the current stadia that we're putting in place. Those have individual project costs that are part of our larger infrastructure budget. I'm not trying to fudge the figure for you, but when those figures are finalized, I think we will be prepared to release them.
And also to ask about, you mentioned you want to reach out to 10% of kids. So what age are these kids from what age range?
So the maths program is really from 6 to 12, though we want primary school going kids, 10% of them to actually be playing soccer, right? It will not be even right through, because obviously I think for girls, they start at a lower base. So there'll be more boys, less girls, but altogether we'd like to have 10%. Yeah. So live births in Singapore now is actually lower, it's probably 30,000 per cohort, 10% is 3,000, 6 years is 18,000. Right? Yeah, about that.
Yeah, hi, this is Han Kyung from Yahoo. Given that the senior national team has not been really successful in the last decade, there's bound to be a lot of skepticism, a lot of cynicism among the public. How are you all going to convince this public that this is a worthwhile national project to push that is beneficial for both the country and both the Singaporeans themselves?
So maybe on the political front, I'll just let him go first. Later, I'll tell you on the football front what we will do.
Actually, the first people we're trying to convince are the parents, because they really make the decision as to whether their children are actively participating in sport, and if they are, whether they want to choose football. When we launched the ActiveSG Football Academy in 2016, we did not imagine that it would grow so quickly to spread across the island. Easily 15 island-wide centers, and now another 5 development centers for those who can take on a more challenging training environment. The desire to play among the children is high, and I think what we are trying to offer parents is a good quality sport program, football program in this case, that will be part of their children's more holistic development, together with their academics, right? It's a program to develop character and resilience. It's a program that allows their children to engage and learn social skills. And there is a pathway and a structure and a system that will be in place that the parents can understand and see what opportunities exist for their children. When Lion City Sailors ran their trials for their academy program, 2,000 children showed up. That's just one club offering football scholarships for that age group. So I think the latent demand is there. What you say is very true. It's a long journey. So as they progress from year to year, our role in working with other stakeholders like coaches, mentors, etc., must be to continue to make that journey worthwhile, worth their time. The next bunch of people that we need to convince are obviously partners like Corporate Singapore. For them to be part of what I call a Singapore journey like no other. Clear targets, clear aspirations, and opportunities to be a part of it, and what it would mean to be a part of it. I think the meaningfulness of this lies in the project becoming as what we've called a national project, where the experience has got to be palpable. We have invested in a national stadium. No other sport is going to fill it to 55,000. So how we get our current national team to show the spirit that's required for the future, how we get our age group teams to be serious-minded about the stewardship, their stewardship of the national jersey, and how to get everyone in the game to level up. First of all, in the approach, the mental approach, the discipline, and the serious-mindedness in being able to walk this path together. So Yes, there are many cynics. Yes, we are, as I said, our best or worst critics. But we must believe we are also our own solution. Because the alternative is to not do anything. And then just say, let's give this up. Let's talk about it, but let's not do anything. I think this project clearly has a roadmap and a line of action that we can all get together and participate in and carry together.
So, I'll answer it from a football point of view. So, I sat down one time to ask myself, are Singaporeans genetically ill-disposed to play football? I mean, I really have to understand the question, right? Because if you say why we didn't bother to try, if we conclude that we are, then we shouldn't even try, right? But if you look at the examples of players in top clubs nowadays, they are smaller in stature. I used to think that maybe, you need a giant, right, to actually play football at top level. I always say, Mo Salah is my height. He's just 20 kgs lighter than me, right? Philippe Coutinho is shorter than I am, right? They're playing top-class football. And the development of the game has actually enabled agility as well as technical ability to trump size. This is good news for us Asians, right? It's why Japan and their women's team, which is far smaller, make the World Cup final. So there must be a way in which Singaporeans can develop and play football at the highest level. It is within our reach. I believe that. And that's my message to everyone. So what is lacking, obviously, is a pathway. It's a pathway in which I bring a Singaporean who has the ambition and the commitment to a dream to be able to play in Europe, to be able to play in the English Women's League, right? And the moment that we have a few examples going forward, I think that pipeline will be sustainable, right? I sometimes ask Joe as well, the technical director, right? Is size a constraint to play soccer? It is not, right? And that is something that I think I will put as a message to all parents. If your child has a dream, he wants to work hard, actually soccer is one of those games that he can actually succeed in. There are some other games you perhaps need to have genetic predisposition like rugby, right? You need size, right? I don't think soccer is one of those games. So that's what I would say from a footballing point of view, right? Let our children can play at the highest level. Let them have a chance.
Hi, I'm Pauline from Channel 8 News. Would you be able to share with us what's the current morale like on our national team, the players? Then also, can we have an update on the progress since we announced 2 years?
Right, not just the children, but I think also our national team, our players who are currently in the pipeline, that soccer will have the emphasis and will have the support to develop into a world-class sport in Singapore. Right, so if you ask me, I think this announcement is something that will boost the morale of everybody in the community.
Now, regarding the morale of the national team, I can say with a lot of confidence that the morale of the national team players as well as the official are high because everybody is working under a new leadership which has shown his capabilities. Now, when we talk about when your question deals with the outcome in 2034, we do not look at this present cohort of players at that time because it will be about 13 years down the line. So 13 years down the line, we need to, start to produce create a pipeline through this national project to get the necessary players to replace the current cohort. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we do not measure for this national project, we do not wish to measure it by the success at international level. We look at it in a global manner in which we want the national project to succeed. As you can stage, as I mentioned earlier, we were riding high and in dominance for the ASEAN Championship four times. If you look at the statistic of the AFF or the ASEAN Championship. Singapore achieved 4 championships, and we were just 1 championship away to equal that of Thailand, because Thailand had 5 they have secured 5 championships, whereas Singapore had 4 championships. Now, so you could see that if we were actually fixing it at the international level, that would be what would happen, all right? Because in certain era, certain time, Singapore team did well at ASEAN level, perhaps not at Asian level, or sometimes they do it well at Asian level. At certain era, they go down at another era. So we have to push on with this belief. We have to be full of conviction that the whole pathway that we have thought of, and we will continuously learn along the way to inject new pathway, new ideas to improve it. So hopefully by 2034, a new landscape will be laid for the Singaporean to treasure and also to enjoy. But in the meantime, as I said earlier, the good performance of the current national team will indeed be an aspiration and motivation for the whole landscape in Singapore for this national project.
Okay, afternoon, everyone. I'm Liang Yi from CNA Broadcast. Thanks for your presentation. A few clarifications from me. First of all, the 250 boys and girls at the elite level at the secondary school level. Can I just check how that number is determined? What's the current number and how we're going to get there? For the scholarship, it's mentioned as a way to get a healthy football ecosystem and help players with the post-playing career. Can I just check? Can I just ask for clarification on how we intend to do that and how does it help with a post-playing career? And lastly, for NS, for the NS part, the flexibility, can I check what's new compared to existing measures in the past few years? Thank you.
We have to take one question at a time. So, okay, so let me take the first one on the SFA, then 250. Okay. So actually, so the way it works is something like this, right? So for elite programs, you can't just get big numbers and, small number of academies. It doesn't work that way. Because what you need in an elite program is game time for the kids. So it's just like a sports school, I told you, it takes in about 14, 16 players. That's the amount that you probably want to take in for 2 years at every year about 4. Let's put it this way, under 14, you want a squad of 25, right? You want a squad of 25 players. So basically it means 20 academies that's training at a high level, right? To get 250 across the board. And of which we think 15 will come from schools and 5 will come from outside schools. Right, so it works something like that. Basically, that's the idea. That I told you already. That will be 1,000. That will be training on the elite level, which is really a huge increase from what we are doing today. And hopefully, with that kind of base, we will be producing talent that will feed into the elite talent pool as they come to the SPL age. So that's the first question. Okay, so if you ask me, right, there are elite programs that are all across the board, but they are not all the same. Curriculums are not standardized, nor are training times standardized. So you can go to private academies and they will probably be training maybe 2 to 3 times a week because they're private academies and, people go. I think Active SG has a program and they probably train 3 times a week. The sports school does 5 times a week. So it's not really the same. What we are trying to do is to promote the best practice so that all across the board that we have elite programs training at that level. If you ask me for the numbers, I would say per cohort today, or the entire system, we do 1,000 now from the age of, say, 13 to 17, we probably have about 200 to 300 undergoing that program. Next question? Next question is,
With all national athletes, we have always worked with MINDEF on specifics of their pathway as well as the campaigns that they're on, whether the campaign is for major games, whether the campaign is for World Championship, or even at the highest level for the Olympics. I think this project will help focus on very specific athletes, on a very specific pathway for very specific campaigns where Sports Singapore and MCCY will work together with MINDEF within the existing systems and schemes to enable these athletes to be able to train and perform. Right? So this is not a new system, and I think we have worked very successfully. With all national athletes, we have always worked with MINDEF on specifics of their pathway as well as the campaigns that they're on, whether the campaign is for major games, whether the campaign is for World Championship, or even at the highest level for the Olympics. I think this project will help focus on very specific athletes on a very specific pathway for very specific campaigns where Sports Singapore and MCCY will work together with MINDEF within the existing systems and schemes to enable these athletes to be able to train and perform. Right? So this is not a new system, and I think we have worked very successfully on very specific use cases when we think about athletes who are on a major campaign with a very clear objective. Right? So you can reference all the different patterns that we've had, right? We've had early enlistment in the past. We've had the sportsman scheme, the athlete scheme. We have, in the case of Shkulin, Kwa Zeng Wen, long-term deferment based on a very clear campaign. So I think in this particular instance, there is opportunity for us to be able to work within existing schemes and systems to fit the pathway and the campaign that the players are specifically embarking on.
What was your third scholarship? Post-spring career. Well, the first thing is the best welfare you can give to an aspiring athlete is to make sure his academics are good. So that's, again, a very integral part of the whole thing. No one can guarantee you a career in any sport. I think Teck In will be happy to tell you that in any other sport, right? So really, at the end of the day, obviously there will be people who will make it and people who don't. But what we want to make sure is all our athletes have an academic development that they can fall back on. It's incredibly important. I also say this very clearly, it's a uniquely Singapore requirement. I think in Singapore, our parents do want our children to have an academic, even if he's a very successful sportsman. And unless we provide the environment, I think the participation rate will never go up. So this is an undertaking that we say in this program, it has to emphasize both, right? It's been done in different sports before. We know that swimming, for example, that they can go together. And you can't tell me that their time is any less, right? I think swimmers spend a huge amount of time training. In soccer, we need to have that in soccer.
Let me just add that in Singapore sport context, I don't see academics as a fallback. I see it as part and parcel of your overall development as a high-performance athlete, right? It's the case in all careers, in all journeys that our young people go through, that indeed, if you are high-performing in whatever chosen field that you have undertaken, you will be all right. I have a great number of athletes under my employ, ex-national athletes. As I say, I have people like Durek, Tonghai, Razali, Terry Pamanathan. I've got Shakir, I've got Vanessa Neo. But I'm not the only employer of our ex-retired national athletes. We know of many companies under the Specs Business Network who have taken on our athletes because they bring a certain character to the table, they bring a certain ability to the table. There is no reason why footballers on this project will likewise be able to find careers post-playing. Some of them will, through the project, be able to find careers in the industry that I think will also develop as part of this project, because it is very clear in my mind that there is an industry play that's going to be very important to the capabilities that we will require. Whether those capabilities are in technology, whether those capabilities are in academies, whether those capabilities are in, if you like, administration.
Yeah. Maybe just to back what Teck Yin said, I think at the end of the day, the opportunities in the industry will definitely soar. Just on the back of the envelope, if you do calculate the amount of people who are playing, and there's a ratio, right, of one coach to how many kids, right, you will see the creation of 300 to 500 new jobs, right, in coaching alone. And that's just on coaching. So there's also a promise that with a vibrant ecosystem, right, there will be opportunities. But then I say again, that will come as a consequence of participating in the sport. And there's absolutely, a market down there that we can take advantage of.
I'm Yu Xin from Zalpa. I have two questions. One is just now to touch on the coaches. How many coaches were needed? And because Singapore is not a very, a prominent football country, how do you, I think, we can attract those good coaches from overseas to come here? And secondly, we see this project is very ambitious and become a center stage of the sports, overall sports in Singapore. How do we justify soccer, football as the one who should take the center stage at this moment? Yeah.
So the second question I will let Teck Yin say, because as a football person, I don't even see the need to ask that question. But I'll let Teck Yin, since he obviously has to balance across the other sports. I'll just answer the question on the coaches. You're talking, because there's a whole range of coaches. So grassroots coaches will come largely from domestic sources. They can even be volunteer. Parents can also be grassroots coaches. Teachers can be grassroots coaches. So there's a whole program in which we want to be able to train more people to actually engage in grassroots training. Remember, again, I want to make soccer easy, right? It's not difficult to play. If you all recall the old days when we played soccer, it was basically in any open area with 2 school bags, right? And then you have a plastic ball and you will kick it. I want it to be that easy. So when the grassroots coaches go there, actually it's just to make sure safety, make sure that people all participate, people have fun, and they learn some technical skills along the way. At the best program, I think those are the kinds of things that we look for. I think what you're asking for as coaches at the elite program, I think the ability for Singapore as a location to attract coach with a project like this will not be a problem. And in fact, actually, we will be looking forward to actually recruiting good coaches to help to form the seed base of pushing our program forward.
What was the second question?
Why soccer? Why football? Yeah.
Actually, as you know, for Sports Singapore, we have a very clear portfolio of sport that we invest in, not just for elite performance, but for the purposes of mass participation. And as I highlighted earlier, amongst the team sports, and amongst sports for that matter, football is amongst the most highly participated, with about 130,000 above 13 years of age playing football every week in pre-COVID times. I think the interest, the fun, camaraderie, and the ability to not just play but to also watch and cheer makes it a total sport. Getting into a stadium and watching football live is an experience that many people, football fans, hardcore football fans, and even casual football fans could easily enjoy. That said, we do also want to see other team sport in Singapore continue to develop and to grow, right? From a Sports Singapore perspective, as I said, I congratulate the FS Council on the commission to put together a lofty aspiration that has got us working with them very closely because we think the outcomes are worthwhile, and we would also invite the same from other team sport.
May I just make a pitch also for football? Why football is special. If you look at across the ecosystem of football, football has grown in leaps and bounds. It is a sport, the spectatorship has increased. I think every FIFA World Cup breaks records in terms of viewership and revenue that's coming in. If you ask what is the most watched sport in Singapore, it will be football. If you ask kids what they want to play the most, it will be football. So it does have a special place. It is also the only sport, like what Teck Yin has said, that can actually fill the national stadium.
Unfortunately, due to time constraints, we have time for one more question.
Amos, can I just... your question about this project requiring a lot of coaches. and where do we get them from, right? Overseas, etc. But just I have the statistic here. You know, for your information, we have, you see, there are different category of license, right? For pro diploma license, we have 24, and AFC A diploma license holder, we have 52. Right, then B diploma, we have 140, C certificate coaching 698, grassroots coaching course we have 645, and we have the FAS introductory coaching course 24. So you can see in terms of numbers, there is no lack of coaches to help us in this national project.